Hey everybody, and welcome to the FFL Solidity team call. My name is Marisa Maggio. Today is September 28th of 2023, and we are officially going into October week 1. So we just wrapped up September, but without further ado, we do have a very special guest on with us today. We have Jonathan, who has been absolutely crushing it before telesales, with telesales, kind of both, and we're going to hear a bit about his story. I think that the reason we kind of sit back and think about, hey, who could we have on the call that's going to be beneficial? Here's what I know, guys. I get on Dial Team. Like there's like a couple people I could like point out on here that get onto Dial Team, right? And the ones that do, we know. And it's like I see Jonathan, he's on there and he seems very unfazed. And it's not always an easy thing to look unfazed when you're, going through the process, so to say. And not only the unfazed, but really just kind of the seasoned behind it. So without further ado, we have Jonathan on with us today. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on with us. How's your day going?
My day's going great. Thanks for having me. First and foremost, glad to be on the call. Hopefully I can add some value.
Absolutely, no doubt that you will. And before we kind of jump into like the nitty gritty, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you were doing before FFL, and kind of what brought you to things this week.
I'm having trouble. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Much better, yes.
Okay, cool. I thought somebody was messing around with me the other day on Zoom, but they definitely weren't. All right. So before we kind of jump into the nitty gritty, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you were doing before Family First Life, and kind of what got you involved with Family First Life.
Yeah, so I've been, this is my third year that I've been with FFL. I sold my first policy December 19th of 2020. And before that, I had my own business. We were wholesaling diabetic supplies on Amazon and just did a bunch of different business through like pharmacies and things like that. And I ended up overextending myself. And I actually lived that entrepreneur story of actually having to move back in with my parents and sell everything. And so it was not pleasant, like how some people glamorize it. It was not fun. And I found FFL through Pablo Perez, and I was looking for like the next thing in my life of what I was going to do. It was pretty like humbling time, and so I was looking for a sales job for my girlfriend, and I told him that. He's like, just sell life insurance. And I started watching a bunch of videos with Andrew Taylor when he used to come out with videos like every day almost, it seemed like, and I would just binge on these training videos. And I thought, man, I think I can probably do this. And my ultimate goal was just to try to sell like, 5,000 a month and just, make some side income. And then I just got hooked from there.
Absolutely. And sometimes, it works out that way. I always say we usually don't come into this industry, pretty, but we make it as pretty as, we work it to be, so to say. And I applaud you for that because it seems like you're doing really well.
Thanks.
You got it. You got it. And I love how you also said like the side income. You're like, hey, I was looking to make a little bit of a side income. Wasn't necessarily like going to put all my eggs in this basket. But once I got into the basket, I was like, this makes sense. And you kind of ran with it seems.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So have you always been telesales, or talk to us a little bit about, were you in home before? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So my first 2 years in the business, I was all mortgage protection, and I was doing everything in person. And I was my first few months, I was doing all instant internet leads in Chicago. And then I got introduced to mortgage protection. And then that was in the March of 2021. I started doing mortgage protection, was really bad at it in the beginning. And then I started getting the hang of it. And I was doing just 100% in person. And so, 2021 all the way up to the end of last year was all mortgage protection. And then I started transitioning in January to telesales. And then as of May of this year, just 100% telesales.
Love it. So you kind of went through a transitional phase, kind of going from all in home, all mortgage, to transitioning now to completely all telesales.
Yeah, I was the biggest like mortgage protection junkie. I was driving all over the state of Illinois I was so obsessed with. I just wanted fresh direct mail, and it was starting to get very difficult to get leads that way. And so I was like, I'm just gonna get more leads in more counties, and I would like drive like 3 hours just for like two appointments. It wasn't making much sense.
Right. But a lot of people, and I know that there's even some people on this call, that we're just all mortgage protection and making that transition, not only just from in-home to virtual, but from mortgage protection to, final expense or general life insurance can be a little bit tricky at times. Will
Yeah.
you talk to us a little bit about kind of your mindset maybe in the beginning of that versus your mindset on it now?
Uh, yeah. I mean, it was just to me, I live in Chicago, so to be able to get fresh direct mail, it would be like feast or famine with leads. So there'd be some weeks I would get 20 direct mail leads, and then some weeks I wouldn't get anything. And so it was pretty difficult to just, duplicate my income month over month. And I would get frustrated. And that's why I kind of got desperate where I was just trying to find fresh direct mail. And I was looking for something that I can essentially, you know, it was predictable, and I can do it week over week. And that's when I got into just generating my own leads and running, telesales, which is a much better use of my time versus, if you're running in person, you're going to get no show, you're going to get no sales. And this business in its most simplest form is just about conversations and how many people you can talk to on a daily basis. And so, I'm just right now, as far as doing telesales, all I do is just focus on how many full presentations can I do in a day. And, I'm getting 30 to 50 fresh leads a day, and I'm just running through them, at least doing 250 to $300 a day and just focusing on the activity instead of just trying to figure out like my lead situation, which is just a pain in the butt to manage week over week.
Absolutely. And I think that that's huge too, because another piece of it too is, when you're, and I know this because I was the same person as you, by the way, that would like drive across like 8 states to go run a mortgage lead, like that was me too.
Mm.
Guilty as charged. But it kind of comes back to, like you said, predictability. And when you can start predicting what the actual lead flow looks like and you have more of a handle on it, so to say, it's not only predictable for you, but it's also predictable for the agents that you're working with or bringing on board too. And that's really important. So I love how you made that transition. Now, talk to us a little bit about your schedule. What does that look like? Now, in this business, I always say if you don't have a schedule and you don't, or you have a schedule and you don't follow it, like you're already out of business. But
Right.
talk to us a little bit about like what your schedule looks like and why it looks that way.
Um, I mean, I just honestly, because I think there's you got to keep this business really simple, and if you just focus on presentations, um, you're gonna make it happen versus dials versus whatever it takes. Um, whether it's appointments, if you focus on the money making activities, you're gonna be successful. So I try to be in by 8. That's not always the case, to be honest. Heather Heather is always beating me on the dials. Um, so I try to be at the office by 8 and just hit the phones. I've uploaded my fresh batch of leads, and I'm just running through those. I do a single dial. I don't do triple dials. I think when you triple dial, people just get angry at you on that third time if they do answer. And so I'll dial them multiple times throughout the day as opposed to just back to back to back. And I'm just doing that multiple, until I hit 350 dials. My average is about, I'm closing someone every $150. That's my average. Some days it's better, some days it's a little bit worse. Yesterday I dialed, maybe $200 and we closed 2. So I just focus on the activity, focus on the presentations. I've learned to become just totally non-emotional about this process, which it can be emotional business. And that's kind of what I focus on.
I love that. So really kind of just like you look at the schedule like, hey, if you're getting the reps in, like that's what we need. That's what I need, right? I need to know I got X amount of reps in or I got X amount of like so presentations or dials. It kind of sounds like you're looking
Yeah.
at. And when you're saying presentations, Jonathan, just so no one's confused on here, you're talking about like you're going all the way from the beginning all the way to the close, right? Like, and
Yeah.
you're finalizing it.
Yeah.
So with that, it's almost goes back just like in the home. Once you know your numbers, and you're just rocking with it unemotionally, like you said. So I love that. And talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned it a bit, but talk to us a little bit about your lead flow. Like, I know that you mentioned you were on predominantly mortgage prior, but talk to us now about the lead flow in terms of what you would expect an agent that's doing the same thing as you to have, lead flow wise, day in, day out, week in, week out, what would that expectation look like?
Yeah. So my numbers are a little bit different because I do have agents that I give leads to. And so just for myself, I'm spending about $170 a day on my own leads. And, that generates me anywhere from, 25 to 50 leads a day, depending on what the cost is that particular day. So yeah, that's kind of, I'm getting 30 to 50 every day. They're my own. I'm not having to purchase them. It's all automated. I upload them to my phone burner, and then I just focus on just, dialing for the next, 7 or 8 hours.
Love it. I think that's really important because it's like when you wake up, if you have no brand new leads, it doesn't feel that great to get on the phone, right?
Yeah.
It makes it like that much harder, right?
Yeah, you just
To
want to
pick
stay
the
in
phone.
bed that day if you don't have like fresh leads, to be
Yeah,
honest.
you're like, oh, you try to make every excuse in the world for yourself, right? And then that doesn't work either. So that's huge. Making sure that you have, again, so whether it's 25 to 50 brand new leads to you, right? Like it doesn't really, guys, make sure you have those every single day, especially if you're doing telesales. Like Heather just said, reoccurring leads are key. If it's automated and you don't have to think about it in whatever facet that means to you, do that because that's what's going to make the most sense. And that's what's also going to make sure you get out of bed and you do what you said you were going to do each and every day.
Right.
So I love that. And that's just great in terms of accountability too. And now what are the top three things? Because, being in home and doing telesales, as much as it's still you're helping a family, right? Which I love. But talk to us about maybe, the top three things an agent should know about the telesales process prior to just being like, I'm going to do telesales and picking the phone up. Like, what are some important things that agent, should know?
I would say I definitely recommend people just, I mean, depends on your personality. I did about, when I started transitioning from January to April, I was doing about 20% still in person. And it wasn't until I was able to get increase my lead spend on Facebook that allowed me to just to jump 100% into telesales. So I would say the first one thing is the first 10 seconds of the phone call are going to be the most crucial. That can't be underestimated. That can't be like talked about enough. It could be whether or not they hang up on you, and you lose that, you lose that lead, or if you keep them on the phone a little bit longer. That's the most important thing. That if you can match the first 10 to 15 seconds, you're golden.
Absolutely. I'm going to pause you there before you give me the other two. Now, in that first 10 seconds, I wholeheartedly agree. That's where you're making, your first impression, right? If you will. So it's definitely important because it's going to dictate if the person hangs up on you or if they stay on the phone with you.
Yeah.
Give us a quick, what did that sounds like for Jonathan? If you would just want to do like a quick role play of the intro.
Did you want me to go through my script?
Yeah, or just like the first, like what you
Okay.
just said, almost like the introduction.
Yeah. So something that I never say is, hey, is this Marissa? I never ask, is this Marissa? Because that's automatically going to raise your guard up. I'm always just Marissa,
Yeah.
And saying that, like questioning, because I'm calling Marissa, I'm going to know that. Why would I ask? That's kind of weird that I would ask, is this Marissa? Like that's strange. And then, they'll say yes. And then I'll speak slowly. I'm dealing with primarily, seniors, 50 to 90 or 89 years old. So I'm speaking slow. And I'm identifying, I'll say, hey, Marissa, this is Jonathan, just getting back to you about that form you had filled out regarding the final expense and the burial programs. You had listed X as your beneficiary. I'm assuming you remember doing that. Now, I think it's important to say the beneficiary right away that's creating, that's recalling the memory of that person that they care about and why they filled that form out to begin with. And then, and it's also building trust and credibility. And so then they'll acknowledge that. And then I'll also acknowledge the date of birth. I have your date of birth on file. I say on file because I think it's important to say stuff like that to sound more professional and legitimate, as this. And then they'll say, no, I filled that in incorrectly. It's this. It's so funny. Like, no, they didn't let me change it. And so like you've already won at that point. And then I'll proceed with my script. That's my
I
first
love
like
it.
15, 20 seconds.
And that's so important. I love how you said, I never say, is this such and such? Like, even if, I'm calling Jonathan, so to say, and a woman answers, I'm still going to say, Jonathan, because to the best of my knowledge, that's Jonathan's phone number that he put down, right? So until otherwise corrected, I think that that's really important. No matter what kind of lead you're calling, it's not, is this such and such? That's like very telemarketer,
Yes.
scammy, like spam, like no one picks to that. And then
Yeah.
also giving the information like the beneficiary right off the rip. Like, you put down your beneficiary as Christina, like I'm not going to hang up on them. Like they just name drop my sister. Like, so it's like I'm going to let them proceed, even if I maybe forgot or was a little bit older, right? Because we bump into those older leads too. And I
Mhm.
like how you're just verifying the basic information. And like you said, once they answer yeah, or whatever it might be, it's like, okay, like they know they did it, they did it, everybody's on the same page. So
And
I
I'm
love
sure
that.
and the reason why I say the beneficiary, like right after they acknowledge that it's them on the phone, it's, how many times we've heard, I never filled that out. I never did this or I never did that. And when you say the beneficiary name, they'll be like, oh yeah, that's my sister. Or yeah, that's my good friend. And then like, it's a
Good
downward
change.
spiral of that point because you've already got them on the line. So that little thing I think is really important to do.
Absolutely. That's huge. And then, so that was the first thing. What would you say are two other things that agents really in the telesale world should be aware of, before they're jumping in or right when they're jumping in?
I mean, just to think that it's not just because you're doing telesales, you got to work almost harder. You got to make sure that you're just not wasting your time on Facebook or just mindlessly wandering away. You got to focus on the activity. Um, Telesales sounds fun and exciting, and you're closing people over the phone, but in reality, it is a grind that is a lot of work, and so don't think that you're going to escape the work by working telesales. It's harder. You're just leveraging the phone to be able to make an income and talk to more people. So be intentional about that. The last thing, track your numbers, track your conversations, track your presentations, track your dials. If you're not making money, if you're not being successful in this business, it just comes down to those metrics. I focus on 5 people. If you focus on 5 presentations a day, if you're really bad, you're going to close 1. If you're really good, you're probably going to close 3. So, focus on those numbers. And if you focus on that, you won't be emotional about the process of like not closing someone, or I got to think about it, or I got to talk to my son or my priest or whoever they need to talk to make a decision.
Right. And those are huge. So I like the fact that you said you have to work harder on telesales. To be honest, anybody I know that does telesales at a high level, they work a heck of a lot harder than some other people that I know. And that's not a jab at anybody. It's just the actual reality. And like Jonathan's saying, it might sound really appealing, like, oh, I get to do it at my house. And it's like,
Yeah,
it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? Like, it's hard work and it's a grind. That's for sure.
absolutely.
And then track your numbers, right? Just like in the home, it's like, I used to know, okay, if I go in this many houses, I sit with this many people, this is how many I'm going to close, because it's the law of large numbers. As you
Yeah,
get better, you're going to see that average is like you need to do a little bit less, so to say.
right.
But if you keep doing the more, you're going to have that, the more there as well. So I
Yeah,
love how you said those 3 things. So again, guys, just to reiterate what he said, the first 10 to 15 seconds of the phone call, that's important on telesales. It's also important on setting an appointment. The second would be realizing in telesales, you have to work harder, like just as hard, if not harder. It's a daily grind.
yeah.
The third, track those numbers, right? So that you can say, these are my metrics. What am I doing wrong? Right. So love that. And then I've heard you on dial team. Are you typically setting up appointments, or are you typically one call closing, and what dictates which way you're going?
So basically my schedule is I'm always trying to one call close because I'm assuming that I'm never going to get that person on the phone ever again in my life. That's just how things are sometimes, especially with seniors. They're getting blown up all the time by different people trying to do something with them. So I'm assuming that that one time that I get them on the phone, I'm going to try to close them right there. And so basically how I do both. I do try to one call close all my fresh leads. And then I'll drip on them through texting. And I think that's a powerful tool, especially with internet leads. You need to be texting consistently. You're not going to get the best ROI if you're not utilizing that. I would say a third of my policies all come from appointments that I booked via text. It's not talked about enough. I think it should be. Like, if you're trying to sell more, if you just implemented that on a consistent basis, your numbers would go up a pretty significant amount, I would say.
I love that. So you're assuming basically, like you said, once you get them on the phone, that you're never going to get them on the phone again. So if they're
Yeah.
in a position to grab that pen and paper, you're just going through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. And then also, like you said, I agree with you that the texting is not talked about enough. The way that you can book appointments, like I've literally left my office and woke up to 6 appointments just because I sent out a text message.
Right.
It's like, guys,
it feels great doing that. I love sending them out and seeing the appointments. It's like someone's working for you without you actually having to do it.
exactly. It's like you didn't, you picked the phone up yesterday, but now you're kind of reaping the rewards that next morning. So, and the days that go after it. Like I've had texts nobody answered for a month, and then they answer me back like, yeah, I still need my options on that life insurance, right? So, guys, you never know where it's going to come from. So if you're not texting people, definitely implement that. As Jonathan just said, a third of his policies come from that. Now, Jonathan, I want to not completely brag on you, but brag on you quite a bit. Now, in Jonathan's first year here at Family First Life, and you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong, you helped about 350 families, give or take, in your first and second full year.
Yeah, 330. It was 330.
Okay. I appreciate the humble there. You're like, no, it was actually 330. And
Yeah.
you're on track to hit Hall of Fame this year, yeah?
Yes, ma'am. We're shooting for it. I just saw the numbers this week. Today they just updated for week 3, and I'm a little bit off track, so I got to get back on track.
Hey, no doubt you're going to hit it. And, being right in that, the 300s, families helped in a year range, guys, that's not a bad place to be. Like, it's not a bad place to be. And you will absolutely get there, no doubt, Jonathan. But if we think about the text, really where I was going with this is, hey, if he's helping 300, let's just call it 300 for an even number in a year, he would only be helping 200 if he's not sending out those texts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so guys, go the extra mile. It's like if you're in person and you're not door knocking, it's the same thing. I can attest to I will attest to that all day, every day. You know what I mean? Like if you're out in the field and you're not door knocking, like that doesn't make sense to anybody. You should be basically door knocking like you would be texting out essentially to people, guys. That's how high the activity needs to be. And it doesn't matter where you're at. Sometimes in this business, you might be in the business for 3 years where you're going through a little bit of a slump. That's okay, but you got to figure out how to get yourself out of it. In some ways, if you're doing telesales, hey, send out those extra text messages that you don't feel like sending, right? If you're in the field, hey, do those extra door knocks that, by the way, nobody wants to do. So when you get to their door, they're probably going to let you in, right? Like go the extra mile. So I love how you said that. I think that's really important. And in this business, I think it's important that we all kind of work on ourselves, right? We have to become kind of a better version of ourselves, even showing up every single day, on the dial team, even making sure that you're there for yourself, right? You're there for yourself before you're there for anybody else, so to say. And what has really helped you in terms of working on yourself daily?
I think for me, just knowing that there's a bigger goal. Like I don't, if I have a good day or a bad day, I don't really let it get to me. As far as working on myself, I think just working out in the morning is important. Exercising, getting that endorphin release is important. Just makes you feel like you're getting a win there. And when you start with wins, you end with wins. So stuff like, just working out is important. And so, and just to me, I focus on like the bigger, we're shooting for integrity and trying to build a team and build an agency. Focus on the bigger prize than just the day-to-day grind of, selling insurance. Like, it's not really something that I really overly, I enjoy doing it to a degree. I like helping new agents make money, but it's not something like I just overly enjoy the grind on a daily basis, but I just focus on the bigger picture.
Right, the long term. So I love that. And like you said, guys, it doesn't have to be like this big deal. Like some people, like Jonathan's saying, like he works out in the morning and that just kind of puts his head in the proper space. He has a small win under his belt. He's probably going to have more wins throughout the day. That's just how life works for whatever reason, guys. So it's like whatever your thing is, maybe you journal, maybe you say affirmations, whatever it is for you that's going to help put you in the right place in your mind to get started, like do that in the morning. Even if it stinks the first week you do it, like I get it. Trust me, like I know I've implemented and unimplemented things that, should have stayed there. But the thing is if we can recognize it and realize, hey, like I don't get out of bed till 9:30, right? Like, okay, like you got to fix
Right.
that. Like, or I don't get to the office till 11:30. Like, okay, you got to fix that. Like getting to the office at 11:30, like you're not going to win here. It's impossible. So, small things like that, I think are really important to set yourself up for a day of wins. And last couple things I want to wrap up with, Jonathan. What are your goals to wrap up 2023 and why? You talked about you guys are growing an agency, you guys are building, it seems, in a great direction with a great group of people from my lens anyways. What do you see 2023 kind of wrapping up for you guys?
I mean, ideally, so my number one goal is Hall of Fame. That's I've got the momentum and I'm trying to stay with it. It's so funny that it's just a day to day, like it's always on my mind. And I look at the numbers, it's like, all right, dude, we just got to ramp it up. So that's what I'm really going to hone in on the last quarter of the year. If I can, as far as team volume, we would like to be at 150 families by the end of the month, by the end of the year. I'm sorry. That's kind of what I'm really holding in on. Once the year's out, definitely focus more on the team side and helping agents make money and win. Maybe different lead strategies, and that's kind of what we're trying to hone in on.
I love it. And there's no doubt in my mind you're going to hit Hall of Fame and you're going to help a heck of a
Thank
lot
you.
more people get there too. So that's the exciting part. And just anything else you'd want to wrap up with, tips, tricks, any, outro line, anything else you got for us today, Jonathan?
Man, as far as telesales, I think I really take a lot of pride. I spent a lot of time working on the script and some of the psychology behind the script. So maybe someone would benefit from that if we just went through that briefly.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I kind of like to add some commentary as I'm going along with the script.
Yeah.
So let me see here. So ring ring.
Hello.
Marissa.
Yep.
Hey, Marissa. Good morning. My name's Jonathan. I was just getting back to you about that form that you had filled out on Facebook regarding the final expense and burial programs. You'd listed your sister, Christina, as a beneficiary. I'm assuming you remember doing that?
Yeah, I do.
Perfect. And I have your date of birth on file as 1/1/95. Is that correct?
That's right.
I don't want to say anything that get me in trouble. Well, once again, my name's Jonathan. I'm one of the Illinois licensed underwriters. And is this the first time that you're looking for any sort of coverage, or you have something in place and you're thinking about adding on to it?
No, this is the first time I'm really looking into it.
The reason why I asked that question, guys, is you're getting a temperature check of where the client's at mentally right away, and you're kind of digging into the why. So if this is their first time looking, I'll ask them, well, what prompted you to think about this now? Well, I'm getting older. Well, my dad died, or my husband died, and I don't have anything. We had to come out of pocket. You're getting to their why right away. Or if they have something already, I don't have enough. I've got something, I don't have enough. Or I've got life insurance. People say, I got life insurance, but I don't have a burial policy. For whatever reason in their mind that they got to have two different things. So I always ask that question. And then I'll proceed with my intro, and I'll say, hey, once I'll reintroduce myself. My name's Jonathan. I'm one of the licensed underwriters out of the state of Illinois. We have 35 different carriers that participate in our programs. All I'm going to do is just run through some brief health and medical questions and see which program is the best fit for you based on your agent budget. And then I'll kind of hear their tone. If they say like, okay, I know, okay, ready to move forward. And I'm just diving right into the financial inventory. And I'll say, health and medical questions, heart attack, stroke, or cancer. All the while I'm asking all these questions, I've got insurance toolkits loaded up, and I'm trying to figure out which carrier is going to be the best fit for them. And I'll dig into that. And it's so funny because I do this all the time, but when I'm talking about it, it's different.
I was going to say, when you're on a live call, it's a little bit different. You're killing it.
I always like to ask, do you plan on being buried or cremated? Because then you could just, like, if the person is 85 and that $10,000 is going to be $200. If they plan on being cremated, then you can put them in a policy that's like, $70 or $80 for $5,000 in coverage, as long as it's affordable. What I've realized for a lot of folks is they just want something. They're really not stressing the death benefit too much. They just want something that's affordable. And so I'll ask them, do you plan on being buried or cremated? I do use a website called funeralocity.com. And that's going to show you the averages of all the cremation costs and the burial costs. And I'll just drop that line like, hey, based on the state of Alabama, the average funeral is, $9,000. And, then I'll just drop that on them just to educate them, because most people don't know what that cost looks like. I do ask them, are you just covering your final expenses, or are you trying to leave a little bit extra? No, I'm just covering my final expenses, or I'm trying to leave behind something extra to sue. And so why I ask that is because I'm gathering information on how much I'm going to show them as far as the death benefit goes, because my number one concern is affordability and trying to figure out their why. I do ask, would that, if something were to happen tomorrow, would that put your significant other, your beneficiary in a bad spot? I'm always bringing up their name, the beneficiary's name, because I do think it's important. That makes it more personal. That brings to light all the good and bad memories they have of that person. Their sweet little son, Bobby. They don't want him to have to liquidate $10,000. I do say that the word liquidate. I think that's a trigger word. Like, I just picture like the stock market, like tanking, like when someone says the word liquidate. And so I picture like their bank account just draining when they have to come out of pocket to pay for their mother's burial. And let me see here. Then I ask those questions. How I ask for income. I'm very big on, like, I don't just ask how much do you make. I like to educate, and then that's how you're able to get information. So I'll say, hey, our programs, they do specialize for those on fixed incomes. How much do you currently take home a month? And to be like, I'm on Social Security. I take home $1,500. Okay, perfect. And does that get sent to those cards, or like most people, or does it go to a bank account? It's a bank account. And now you're learning to navigate, which carrier is going to be the best fit. Let me see here. And so when I'm laying out the options, I've established the why. Something that I'm really big on with my agents is I'll do the price first. So I'll say, hey, the first option is going to be $100. And I say bucks because bucks always sounds cheaper than dollars. $100. This is going to get you $10,000 of day one coverage. I say the price first because the price is the most negative part of the conversation. $100, it's going to be $10,000 of day one coverage. You're indirectly continuing to sell them, by saying day one coverage. Let's say it's an Americo Eagle policy that you're selling. It's going to be $10,000 of day one whole life coverage. It also has a double accidental, which would mean that if you were to pass away from an accident, this policy is going to go from $10,000 to $20,000. And if you were to pass away from what's called a common carrier, train, plane, mass transit vehicle, that policy is going to go from $10,000 to 30,000, and I'll slowly say 30,000. I'm emphasizing the value. I'm selling it. And then, yeah, so that's something that I do. And,
And
at the end,
Jonathan, sorry to interject, but when you are giving them options, do you usually go from price highest to lowest or lowest to highest?
yeah, I always do a 3 option close, and I do start with the lowest to highest. And
Cool.
so something that I always do, let's say maybe I don't know exactly where they're at on their budget. And I think that maybe the last option is going to be, something like $150, maybe more on the expensive side for a final expense client. I'll say, you know what, I don't necessarily recommend this option, but they do mandate that I show you this. And I'm creating, it's all about decreasing sales pressure, increasing credibility. So I have some plausible deniability. Like, I don't want to be the bad guy that's just trying to sell you on a big policy that you can't afford. I'm just the guy doing my job. And so I'll say, hey, I don't recommend this, but they do mandate that I show you this. This one's going to be $150 for, $25,000 in coverage. And then, some of them will take it. And some of them will be like, that's too much money. Something that I also do when it comes to that first option, is I see where they're at when I drop the first price, and I'll pause and I'll see what they like. Ooh, or if they say okay, always like I can continue to go higher. If they're like, oh, that's just too much money, then I got to reverse and try to recover from that. Instead of just proceeding forward with all the higher options that are already unaffordable for them. So that's, little things like that I think are really important on telesales, because you can't see their body language, you can't read that type of stuff, but you can kind of hear what they're saying, and indirectly, all right,
Right.
that $50 is out of their budget. And then basically my closing line is, unfortunately we can't make a decision today. We can only submit an application, but of those options, how much do you want to leave behind for Bobby?
Right.
And then I'll go from there.
And then if you're in that appointment and you get kickback on the social security number, let's just say, what's your like go-to line?
Yeah. How I ask for social is, and I honestly do not, I barely get any kickback off this, and it's something that I've evolved over time. I said, yeah, how the insurance company, I'll name, like, if it's a big company like Aetna or Mutual of Omaha, I'm always going to drop that name, brand recognition. It's important. How Mutual of Omaha or any company, like, why I'm saying any company is because I want them to know that everyone's going to ask for it. So this is something that they can't get out of. How Aetna or any insurance company is going to give you that day one coverage. And I'm like reminding them again, like why I need this is they're going to look at 2 pieces of information. They're going to look at your prescription history. That's just to make sure that you're not taking anything that they would deem as a red flag, like, a blood thinner. Now, if they're taking a blood thinner, I'm not going to say that, but, or any major medication that they would deem as a red flag. They're also going to look at your medical history. That's just to make sure that you didn't have a heart attack yesterday, or you're not dealing with any active cancer. And all of that information is tied in to what we call the Medical Information Bureau, and how they're able to identify you and able to give you that day one coverage. That's all tied in with your social. What's your social? And then they say it. I normally don't get any pushback from that. Something I would like to rewind that I think is also important is right before I go into the application, before I'm asking them any personal information, I'm going to send them my credentials. I don't do that in the beginning. I'm doing that. I want that to be in the top of their mind, that they knew who they're talking to. And I'm going to emphasize how important it is that, it's important that they understand who I am and what's on, who's on the other end of that phone, is what I like to say. And I'm not glossing over that process. That's a very important process to make sure that they got that message and they saw my license. I'm not, I'll pause the conversation and, guide them. Some folks don't know how to read a text message while they're on their phone. So, I'll navigate them through that. And how I ask for banking is, this is a pretty common way, hey, as far as premium payments go, who do you currently bank with? And they'll say Chase. And then I'm Google searching Chase. for the state of Illinois, and I'll say, hey, this auto-populated in my system. The routing number I have for Chase, let me know if I'm right. I'm trying to like just slowly ease my way into that. Let me know if I'm right. It's not always correct. The routing number I have for Chase is 071-000-013. Is that correct? And then they're like, oh, let me go grab my checkbook. And then they do it.
Right.
But yeah.
I love that. So you walk them right into it. And in terms of credentials, I think that's important. You mentioned that you do text them over. At what point are you texting them over your credentials?
That is right after they've made a decision to buy. And, right after they select the option, I'll say, hey, you know what? Before we continue, it's really important to me that you know who you're talking to on the other end of this phone. And so I'm going to go ahead and text you from my direct line, and I'll send it over to them. Did you get that? Yeah, I got it.
And you're just sending that state's insurance license. You're not sending anything else. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, I have a Google sheet. I mean, there's a bunch of ways that I hear people in FFL have I forget all the different websites that you could, build credibility and send it to them. I don't have any of that. I just have a Google sheet with a link to all my state licenses, and I just take a picture of it and send it to them.
Smart. Love it. Makes it nice and easy that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, older folks can't even open up a website. I mean, and look at that. So I try to make it as easy as possible.
Absolutely. I love that. I love how you went through the social because it explains why we do need it. You know what I mean? And it helps just kind of open the door to it. So it's just very normalized. Also,
Yeah.
for people who have never, applied for life insurance before, they don't understand sometimes why you need the social. So if you're just like, what's your social without kind of anything, so I like how you kind of, tee that up. Also the credentials, that's huge. Like, guys, make sure you're sending that license over. If you're in the home, make sure you have your license out on the table. I used to laminate mine. Just make sure it's out there. And then the bank, who do you bank with? I think that's really important. I have the routing number here as, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that correct? It auto-populated. And at that point, anytime I've used that so far in telesales, it's worked for me, like fingers crossed it continues to, but it's helped me guide the client because at the end of the day, guys, we're helping people. So it's not like we're over here like, you know what I mean? Like how to catch a scam on us. Like we're over here helping people with their life insurance. We need their bank information, right? So I love how you just lead, guide, and direct the client kind of to each place that you need them to be. So the psychology behind that script is huge because that's what it's all going back to is how you're collecting and gathering information on first the why and who the person is, who you are, and then kind of explaining that process. I think is just really important. And like you said, the education piece, guys, like that goes a long way. Sometimes you'll have somebody, especially on the phone, that's trying to like rush you off the phone in like 5 minutes. Like, yeah, I can get, what I mean? It's like, okay, like simmer down, Joe. Like we're gonna get there, but like we're here right now, right? So it's just a way to make sure you're educating your client so that they can make a proper decision. Because if they don't understand what it is and what it does, by the time you're at the end, it would be impossible for them to pick one, and it would just be bad business, right?
Right.
So love it. Thank you so much for going through that and running through that script. That was extremely helpful, Jonathan. Anything else you want to wrap up with?
I think that is it. That's it. I think that's it.
Hey,
I've always got stuff of how we can help agents sell and make more money. And so I think that's it for now. I would say just keep things really simple as far as if you're doing telesales, focus on the activity, not necessarily the result of how much premium you're trying to sell that month. If you just focus on the amount of conversations, keeping your lead flow consistent, if you're at a 4 or 5x, that's a pretty good ROI to be at with lead spend to your issue numbers. If you're at more, you're gravy. So don't, once you hit that number, don't be afraid to reinvest. And so right now with my lead spend, I'm at about 8 or 9x, but that's not everybody. And I'd say 4 or 5x is kind of the sweet spot.
That's awesome. Well, hey, you only get better and better. Jonathan, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This call was extremely helpful. I know, no doubt, you're going to hit Hall of Fame this year, helping more than 400 families. And I know that your team will also be helping over 150 families by the end of the year. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you. Afra, you have a question for Jonathan?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So I was all in home for about a year. I just started doing telesales like 3 weeks ago. I have a few questions. So you said you get about 25 new leads per day.
Oh,
So when you're dialing and you're trying to get those 250 to 300 dials in, are you going back to like your older
Yeah.
leads and redialing
Yeah.
those?
yeah.
And you said you only do one ring. Do you leave a voice message or do you hang up?
With phone burner, you could do like a voicemail drop. You just drop a
Oh,
drop down
okay.
there. So I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you mean presentations, does that mean all the way up to where you give them the numbers and you try to focus on doing at least 5 of those a day?
5 of those a day, you'll sell one if you're really bad.
Okay.
So yeah, just on the buying, once you ask them, hey, which one of those options works, that's a presentation. Once you run through everything.
Okay, because I've had like I'm also doing Facebook leads, and we don't have the beneficiary option, so I just kind of go straight to the date of birth. And
Yeah.
2 days ago, I went like 0 for 6 presentations, all the way to the beneficiary and the numbers, and then they would just hang up the phone. Like there was no, and we had a great conversation the whole way. But then I ended up like selling 2 at the end of the night. I did a his and hers. I'm just trying to like get better with the wording. So,
Well, yeah, I'll send over my script if anyone wants it.
yeah, well, definitely. That was my next question. If you could share a script, that'd be great. There's another question I had. Okay, use phone burner. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, phone burner is the game changer. I think if you're not using a power dialer for internet leads, guys, I mean, I don't even know what to say.
I use Ringy. I use
Yeah, that's
Heather's Ringy.
that
So,
works. And it drips on them too, and you're able to. It's like a text campaign.
yeah, it does like 4 text messages, I think, back to back, like every
Nice.
day, for, like the next 4 days.
And you can you can customize it to what you want. Like you can do it even longer if you want it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Nice.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate your time, appreciate your help. This call was extremely helpful for myself and I think for others as well. So make it a great day. We'll talk soon.